Good afternoon, everyone. Just need to wait a few more seconds as it takes a while for the system to call up our attendees, our audience. So in the meantime, I'll say hello to Mina and Olabisi, my guests today. I'll give you the Zoom mic in a minute. We'll just patiently wait for our audience to appear. And then I'll open the webinar. So today is the MBA experience so far. Mina and Olabisi will be talking about how they've experienced the program. They started in January and now it's October. So before we turn it on to them, I just want to wait a few more seconds so that connection problems, anything like that, technical issues, all that are solved. There we are. So Mina, you're calling not from Lausanne, but Olabisi, you're on campus. So, yeah. And I'm on virtual campus behind me. So it's actually very sunny, right? I mean, it is a sunny day. So it is a virtual background that actually reflects the weather. Okay, so I think we're gonna start. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining our live chat today. The title is the MBA experience so far. I am joined by two current MBA students, MBA participants, sorry, Mina and Olabisi. They are both from the African continent, but I will let them introduce themselves. Before we start, a little bit of housekeeping. We will have about half an hour together to chat with Mina and Olabisi, and then there'll be I'll leave some time for questions. You can see at the bottom of your Zoom screen that there is a Q&A button. Please use that. Don't use the chat, otherwise it's a little bit confusing for me, as I will be reading the questions and feeding them to Mina and BC. So please start writing them as they come, and then I will feed them appropriately at the appropriate time. So without further ado, I think Mina, I'll give you the Zoom microphone, let you introduce yourself a little bit. Just tell us a little bit about your background, and then pass the mic to Olabisi. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for having me. My name is Mina. I come from South Africa. I grew up there, and I've been working in real estate there for the last 7 years. And my husband and I, at the beginning of this year, made the decision to move to Switzerland. He also had an opportunity here, and I applied to IMD, and I can't believe it's a full year that's almost passed. So it went past really fast, and it was more than I could have ever hoped for. So I'm looking forward to telling you more about my experience.
Okay, thank you. Olabisi, up to you now.
Hi everyone, you can call me Bisi. I'm from Nigeria, which is where I've also always lived, particularly in Lagos. I've also spent the last 7 or so years working there, and I'm very happy to have made the decision to move to Switzerland. Lausanne is one of the most beautiful places in the world, as you might soon find out. And IMD has been an amazing experience so far. I've made lots of new friends. I've learned a lot of new things, especially about myself. And yeah, I'm happy to share a lot more about my experience here and also before as we continue the discussion.
Okay, so let me do sort of the ping pong. So back to Mina. So why did you decide to apply to IMD and start an MBA now, professionally speaking?
So for me, I was at a point in my career where I built up a lot of different skills, and I was ready to manage a bigger team. So in my previous role, I had a small team that I was managing, and I was slotting in and out of matrix teams in different functions, but I didn't really have my own large team that I was managing. And looking at the IMD program and the strong focus on leadership, that felt like the right time, and it felt like good content to set the foundation for my leadership going forward. Apart from that, I've heard from some of my friends the impact that it has had on their careers. So they went to different business schools all over the world. So an MBA in principle was something that I looked at and thought, you know, I can see the difference it makes. So definitely.
So it was the right, so it really fit with what you were looking for in the time that you were looking for. It was the right thing at the right time. And then it also coincided with your husband wanting to also to move abroad. So you managed to do it as a couple decision.
That's correct. And I think it's really nice that IMD's, the intake age is slightly higher. So everyone in our class has 7 or more years of experience. So our class discussions are really rich, and you learn a lot from the people in your class, never mind from the professor. So that was something that was quite attractive to me, as opposed to a school with a much younger intake.
Yeah.
So that's been a very valuable learning, which makes IMD a bit more unique.
What was interesting, I remember one of the professors said once in front of the class, he said, people, I'm 58 years old. How you, amongst yourselves, you have about 500 years of work experience. What can I teach you? So I think, as you said, a lot of the learning happens really amongst yourselves within the classroom interactions, not just received wisdom from the professor in front of you. Okay, thank you. And what about you, BC? What was your reasoning, and you know, why and why now?
For me, Mina touched on a very interesting point about the average age of the class. I was looking forward to being in an environment where I'd be learning from people that had done a lot more than I had. I also like the fact that it's a small class, and that means that you actually get to bond and build relationships that you can carry forward more easily than you would be able to in a larger cohort. The other thing that helped me connect to IMD very early on is the sort of support I knew I would get once I got in. The way the admissions office came through, I even spoke to a number of alumni who were very helpful. The person who was in the apartment I'm living in now sent me pictures before I moved in. So I very easily felt like it was an environment where I'd come in and I'd have a place. And that's what it's been in reality. Not to talk, of course, about the classroom stuff, the academic stuff. That's been, I mean, I've learned a lot, and I came from a finance background. So it's been very interesting. The opportunity also came at a time when I felt like I felt like I wanted to be closer to value creation. I'd spent a lot of time working in finance, mostly covering stock markets, and telling people what I thought about other people's strategies. And so I felt like it was the right time for me to get my hands a bit dirty and be closer to the strategy, design, and execution. And business school felt like the right environment for that to happen, especially one like IMD that's renowned for executive education. So I've learned a lot. I think I'm now ready to step into a role where I can do the things I plan to do. And so I'm really excited to be starting another phase, even though, of course, it will be hard to come out of this really nice bubble I've been in for what's surprisingly been nearly a year now.
Yeah, and that's what I want to take you back a little bit at the beginning, at your entrance into the bubble. And of course, it's been an interesting year for this bubble. So I'd like to get your input a little bit. So normally we start the year, you know, the program has sort of it's a two-pace program. The first half where there's a lot, it's front-loaded, all the academic stuff very much front-loaded, lots of exams, and then we have a summer break, and then of course you have the international consulting projects, which is where you're at now. You're working on your consulting project. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's do chronologically. So now let's go back to January and your arrival. And can you tell us, maybe again, Mina, you start, and BCU jump in. You know, I'm quite happy if you do your ping pong, the two of you. Can you tell us a little bit how the beginning of the program was? You know, the slide into exams, some of the classes that perhaps marked you a little bit more than others, and then of course we'll talk about lockdown as well. But perhaps just start with the beginning, the arrival in January.
So I think for me, the arrival, like for many other people, when you walk into that auditorium, and we had so many Facebook and WhatsApp groups beforehand, so you kind of get a feel of the characters. It's a small enough group that you can start to get to know people before you arrive. So just walking into that auditorium and actually seeing everyone's faces and your little your name in front of you with your country of origin, it was incredible. And just looking at the profiles of the people that you're sharing this auditorium with, because we very much take ownership of the auditorium, and you have your place and we shift every now and then, but I mean, just understanding the type of people that you're surrounded with was quite overwhelming and a big privilege. And if you look at the profiles of the lectures, I mean, it builds so much excitement for what's to come. The first module is tough. It's very tough. There's not a lot of sleep, and the pace is quite high. I also come from a finance background, and for me, I mean, there was a definite learning curve. Just the level of depth that we go into a much more pragmatic way of looking at topics that I've studied in the past. This will be my 5th degree, and I feel like this is the first time that I've done it in a way that I feel like when I walk out of this place, I will physically be able to start doing a lot of what we've been practicing. So the format is often listen to a section in class, go down to the dungeon. That's where we work.
We don't say that. Yeah, we don't say that. Study rooms.
We go down to the study rooms, and then you practically apply. And there in the beginning, especially in entrepreneurship, Professor Benoit was great at bringing CEOs to class. So we would listen to the story and then give our opinions, and he would then say, okay, for everyone who just spoke, by the way, the CEO is sitting in the back of the room. And so it was very, and then it was very practical, and I mean, the problems that they were telling us was real and was ongoing. And they would then send the class down to the study rooms to work on practical solutions of the actual person that's there with his real business. And I mean, that was really the way that most of our classes worked. And it was great to sit in those study rooms and to start seeing how my colleagues approached problems and planning. And then you kind of steal a little bit from everyone's work method. So there's learning in class, but there's also like writing down things, saying like, oh, Olabisi is really good at, doing this. Or you're like, okay, that's something I could try to copy in the next session. Let's see if I can try and do that and how it feels. So no, it was great.
And BC, how was module 1 for you then?
It was challenging, I'll say. It was also very interesting because, well, luckily at the time we had a lot of energy. And so I think it really helped that we had a lot to do at the time as well. In addition to everything that Mina has mentioned, especially on the teamwork, I think that's something that really helped me is learning how to leverage on people you're working with, right? Because you're doing courses and you have to read multiple page cases before each of those classes. And in the first couple of weeks, everyone's reading 5 cases every day. But then by the time we get to March, you realize that you can actually split up the work, and one person can be the champion for one course or something. So it really helps you to understand how things work in teams, helps you understand how you operate in team settings, and that ultimately impacts how you can go on and perform when you graduate and step into a new role.
So that
other than that,
sorry, I just wanted to interrupt you because that made me think. So teams, it's sort of tied to the leadership stream. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's module 1, the beginning of that as well. Yeah. I see you're smiling. You probably were going to get into that as well.
Exactly. So I was going to say that the leadership stream is a very huge part of the MBA at IMD. I'm not sure if it's the same with Mina, but it's one of the huge reasons why I joined. And it's lived up to everything I expected. It's exceeded my expectation, in fact. And for me, I believe in the theory that IMD has, that understanding yourself and understanding the things that drive you impact how you can perform in business as a leader or even in your personal life. And what the stream really does is helps you identify the things that make you tick also helps you identify the conditions that you like and don't more clearly, so that you can position yourself for your career going forward and really be in environments that help you perform this. Some people think it sounds like a lot of theoretical stuff, but having actually gone through it, I can tell you that it makes a huge impact. I don't think at all that I'm the same person I was at the start of the year, and that's for better. And there's a lot of growth that's happening in the period as well, and a lot of activities that the school has that forces you to reflect. You have to write essays, you have to have meetings with feedback, you have to talk a lot, and that means you have to think a lot. And that's good. So I think that that's been a very huge and interesting part of the entire program for me, and it's definitely one of the reasons why IMD is renowned.
So can I go give it back to Mina, and can you talk a little bit about how the leadership impacted you?
So the leadership stream is not something that you have like once every 2 weeks. It's literally, the leadership stream runs parallel to everything that you do at IMD. So the typical model is you have digital week or innovation week, or you have these block weeks where you come under severe pressure, you collect data points, and then in the leadership stream that weekend, or during the week, you reflect on every single data point that you've collected.
Can you give an example? Can you give an example?
So a good example would be Innovation Week, or IE. So integrative experience is, we have once a year after module 1, you literally implement everything that you've learned so far. You often work straight through the night, and 2 nights in a row in our case. So there's a lot of times when you feel frustrated, or when you feel like, oh, I'm naturally taking the lead and something's working, and other times you feel like, oh, you know, that was, I felt disappointed because my idea wasn't adopted. So these kind of things are all data points that you collect, and then you then discuss that with your, so you have a leadership coach as well as a personal development coach. So that's then data points that you discuss with them. And IMD, the philosophy is that when you arrive in a team or when you arrive at work, you arrive with your whole self. So everything that's happened to you in the past, everything that's frustrating you at home, it's all there with you, and you can think that you can hide it, but you can't. So
that's already a huge realization, right? That every time you enter the room, every time you enter a team meeting, you've got this luggage of stuff that you take with you. And I guess the whole exercise is opening each piece of luggage, and you know, maybe some have more luggage than others, and actually seeing what you carry inside.
And luggage you didn't know existed. Yeah. And the big thing is to identify trigger points right before they happen. So just kind of be very aware when you start feeling anxious or frustrated, and that's been incredibly helpful. Just to identify those triggers before they happen, and to have more control over how you function in a team, and to be able to set serious goals, leadership goals for yourself, and to understand what is standing in your way of getting there.
Okay. So I'm looking at the list of our attendees, and I recognize some names. So it's nice to see you know who you are. I'm not going to mention all of you. I'd like to see some questions coming up for BC and Mina, so that as soon as we're finished with the next bit, I can then ask them questions, also as points of conversation. So don't be shy. Use the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom screen. So we're talking about module 1, and then I guess bang, Corona came. So what happened? Can you tell us a little bit about what happened? I think it was March, around middle of March. So maybe BC, maybe you wanna start.
So we luckily it was right at the end of module 1. So we only had maybe a week of classes to do online. And so we had that, and then we went into exam mode, which we also did from home. Most of our exams were open book exams. And then we had the start of module 2. By this time, we had to start off on Zoom because there were still some restrictions around moving in Switzerland. But luckily, before that ended, we were back on campus. And what the MBA office decided was to split us into 2 groups so that we could come back onto the campus and have face-to-face classes. And so instead of being in one huge auditorium with 90 people, we had 2 auditoriums with 45 people each. And we had plexiglasses set up around us as well, so we were safe. And things worked out. For half of the class, you'd watch the lecture on Zoom, or the lecturer would go back and forth. When one class is on break, the other class would be in session, and so on and so forth. I would say that personally, I was very surprised by how smooth it feels to me that things went, despite all the disruptions that we've seen this year. I mean, the biggest disruptions we had was not being able to do the discovery expedition, simply because the places that we would have gone became unsafe for travel, either because we wouldn't be allowed in or we wouldn't be allowed back out when we got there. And that's clearly out of control of the school. But everything else, in terms of getting us to still have the digital week experience, the integrative exercise, a lot of the things that you'd have in normal years, we actually did have. And so that's been a very huge point of appreciation for me, at least, because I feel like even though there are lots of things that we've had to struggle with as a class and as an organization, there are lots of things that we've also done well, simply because of how, I would say, we banded together.
And also
so that's
because
really,
of the small number. I mean, what you're trying to say is also the fact that it's a small class, it's a small program, it's a small school. So we've been able to accommodate changes much more quickly in a more agile way than if we had been a much bigger organization, I guess.
Yes, that certainly helps. I mean, some of the larger schools had to take much more severe action because of the size of the classes that they typically have to handle. So I would say that the size of our class has definitely worked in our favor, and that has also helped the administration be very, very adaptable to some of the changes that happened with the lockdowns or semi-lockdown here in Switzerland, to things opening back up. And even with the Discovery Expedition, there were several attempts to kind of redesign the experience for us before, in the end, a government decided that they wouldn't let people from our Swiss canton into the country. So that's, I think, is really the overview of what our experience has been so far. And now we're just spending the rest of the year doing virtual interviews, because the organizations are pretty much in the same position as we are.
And I think that could be also the future. I mean, there was this whole talk of new normal, et cetera, et cetera. I think Zoom is here to stay. If it's not necessary travel, COVID or non-COVID, with the whole ecological situation as it is, and reducing travel costs for companies now, it's a major concern. So, you're getting experience now as the first lot to experience online interviews, but maybe that's just how it's going to be. You're going to be the ones interviewing your people in your companies via Zoom and all sorts of other technologies. Mina, so what would you say? So let's say, so we transitioned into COVID time, Zoom classes, and then you came back to campus. So you're in Model 2. Can you sum up Model 2 a little bit?
Module 2 is also quite intense, but not as much as Module 1. Module 2 had things like the Digital Week and Innovation Week was now, but Digital Week, and it was great to be back on campus, because we were in contact with quite a few students from other business schools with bigger groups, and they were not as fortunate to be back, because we were back at the beginning of July already. So yeah, Module 2 was just really great to be back in person and to be having classes face to face.
Okay, and then did you have a holiday? Because normally there is a holiday in between. So did we give you holidays, or did we take them away?
No, we had a great break. Yeah, we did it.
Yeah, we had a nice long break.
Okay, because that also, again, with the fact that we had to change a lot of the program, there were also, I think, added classes and added time for reflection, added time for dedicated to the career development stream, so that it would you would really be able to make the most out of the quiet periods. So then after the holidays, so back in August, you know, so August until now, what's been happening?
Well, I mean, even during the holiday, there were a bunch of additional sessions that were provided. So I was part of the consulting bootcamp, for instance. I had 2 weeks of summer holiday, traveling around with the locals in Turkey and Italy. And then I came back and I had consulting bootcamp for a week, which I think really, really helped me with a lot of the interviews I've had so far. So that was provided as well.
So can you just say a little bit more? Consulting bootcamp, what does that mean?
So what we had essentially was a number of current and ex-consultants from McKinsey and some other firms, and they essentially walked us through what the process is for getting into a consulting firm. So we had sessions on how to structure cases, how to crack cases, how to walk through case interviews, how to do the behavioral part, how to present yourself, and then we had a bunch of mock interviews. And then as is typical with IMD programs, we had sessions dedicated to reflecting upon how you feel and how all of these things fit into your personality and your ambitions. And so I think that for me was the moment when I was finally able to streamline my job search strategy, and is when I started to make concrete moves, many of which I've been happy with the results of. So that was very helpful. And then we came back and we had some sessions, and now we were working fully on the international consulting project. So that's what most of the rest of the year will be focused on. And then we have graduation on the 4th of December as scheduled.
And normally you would have had the electives in November, but actually you had them earlier in August, and
yes,
your partners were also able to participate in those. Which classes, can you just, pick one or two that you attended?
I really liked entrepreneurship, so I attended that again. I also did B2B marketing and M&A strategy, and they were all brilliant. We were very fortunate to have access to those professors, and my husband also attended a few with me, so he could feel what it felt like to be
one of the
experience. Yes.
And BC, one or two that you attended?
So for me, a very interesting one was on fintech and blockchain with Professor Arturo. And since then, a number of classmates and I have launched a newsletter where we're interviewing experts in the industry and publishing results from the interviews, so people can have more easily understandable information on things that are happening. And that was off the back of the class that we had with him. And as a matter of fact, it was the first person we interviewed. So I think it was very interesting. And it was also nice to have some of the partners join us, because it meant we were getting different perspectives than we were getting from even our classmates before. So I think that we had a very interesting set of options. Mina, I'm not sure if you did dramatic resources, but that was fun from what I heard. So that was one that really helps you with your presentation. It's led by someone who actually acts in, I think it's theater in London. So it's really focused on how you present and how you carry yourself and how you position yourself as part of the leadership stream.
So on that, can I jump in and actually ask one of the questions from Matti? He said, "What have you learned about yourself?" So I think that's quite interesting. BC, you mentioned before, after everything, there's time to reflect. You used it in streamlining your career strategy. So can you elaborate a little bit? I mean, obviously you can go as deep as you like, but I think that's an interesting question. What have you learned about yourself?
So for me, it was mostly about how I operate in team settings. I found that compared to the start of the year, when I was usually the first to speak and give my ideas, I'm usually the first to suggest how I think we should proceed. I've taken a bit of a transition to a position where I'm I kind of wait to see what everyone else comes up with, and I try to connect the dots for everyone. And I think what this has done is allow me to give people more space on teams, because unconsciously what I was doing was overexerting myself. And I'm now conscious of that and dealing with it. And as trivial as that might seem to be, I think it's played a very huge role in the subsequent teams I've worked in and the sort of relationships I've been able to build with people since then. So that's just one thing, one very good example of a lot of things I've learned this year.
Mina, do you have one example to share?
Yes, I think for me, the biggest learning was I realized I had this disconnect where I'm a very empathetic, compassionate person, but then sometimes I would, get too goal orientated and forget about the periphery that's going on. So I realized that when the pressure gets going, I tend to get very goal orientated, and I exclude certain team members, or I'm not as aware of my positioning within the team. And I've been able to identify some warning signs so that I can just take myself out of the situation again and regroup, and then take the whole team with, and make sure that you have an overview of all the team efforts and your impact on the progress. So for me, that was definitely a very big learning. And then drawing that line back to in my career and seeing where it's happened previously, and kind of reflecting on my career so far. And I think the biggest learning for me was, and it might sound funny, but I think I now take myself a bit less seriously, in the sense that I had this whole idea that I want to be an investment banker, or you have certain career paths that you think like this is what I want to be. And you don't even understand why you have these aspirations. And I think I've reflected enough this year to know what's going to make me happy in the next 30 years, because we're still going to be working for another 30 years. So I think I'm better positioned now to do what's right for me and not chase some ego dream that never made sense in the first place.
Okay, that's thank you so much. Thank you for sharing, both of you, your experiences and your special learnings about yourselves. We have another question, or two questions actually, on your expectations. So what was in line with what you expected before coming to IMD, and what did you how did the actual experience compare with the expectations that you had? I have both Bernardo and then Laura as well. What special learnings did you get that you didn't expect? So how were your expectations compared to the reality that you found?
So I would say for me, I expected I thought I was going to I thought I'd picked one of the best business schools I could go to, but I thought at the end of it, I was going to a business school. And so I expected some sort of superficial environment and teaching. I also thought I'd be very competitive within the class, and you'd have to present yourself in certain ways in order to be accepted. But I found that the things I've learned have been serious and meaningful, and to me impactful. I found that I'm not sure, and I still don't know how IMD does this, but the environment is very collaborative. I'm not sure if it's something about the selection process, or maybe how a safe environment is created with the leadership stream, but somehow you find that people are more prone to try to help you than try to take from you or be aggressive. And I think it's also part of the reasons why I've been able to make the transition from being very hot and fiery to being a bit more level-headed, because of the safe environment I've been able to operate in. So I'll say that those are things that have exceeded my expectation in terms of being here. And this is outside of the classroom stuff, which again is, top-notch. IMD professors are world-renowned, so I'm not sure that we need to spend lots of time talking about the academics. But in terms of the soft stuff you get, it's very meaningful, it's very impactful, and I think it's very useful stuff that opens up a lot of good things for you.
Okay, Mina, do you want to add your side?
Yes, I think for me, just I was expecting, as Bisi said, a kind of a cold, very corporate, very formal kind of environment, just because that's what you hear from business schools, and it wasn't that at all. I've made great friends. Bisi will be helping me with interview prep next week. She's helping quite a few people, so super collaborative, and I've made friends for life, and it's definitely. I mean, the profile of the people in class are as impressive as I thought they were, but much more human. And I think the biggest surprise to me was you see the lineup of professors, and they're, I mean, award-winning authors and some of the most prestigious people in the business in the business world. And then you have these personal connections with them as well, and they're willing to help you with any questions, and they're generally concerned for your learning and your career going forward. So I think that to me was a surprise, how because it's such a small class, how intimate the learning was from these incredible professors.
Okay, thank you, because that answers Ravi's question. I hope it does, Ravi. He was asking, how did you balance competitive to collaborative with your classmates when it came to assignments, exams, and projects? I think you sort of answered that you know, there's pretty much there's more of a collaborative atmosphere and one of support. BC, you were even saying at the beginning you would share resources. You know, one would be the star from one.
Yeah.
You won't survive if you don't.
Yeah,
Exactly.
You won't. So you won't survive. So that's just, it's kind of like the whole module 1 forces you into like taking hands and saying, okay guys, I can't do this alone, so we need to collaborate. Yeah,
interesting, because on sort of how to survive, there's one question from Harita, and she asks, Mina mentioned collecting data points on various experiences and discussing, reflecting them in leadership stream. Given that this year is going to be full of experiences, do you have a system, a framework to note down, collect such experiences and track them to see the evolution? As an engineer, and I think that's where she's coming from, I'm thinking how I can go through this efficiently. So perhaps instead of an Excel sheet, perhaps emphasizing the collaborative nature, you know, the fact that you can use your classmates to feed you also those data points, to give back, to help you be more aware of what you do or you don't do or you could do. But let me let you expand on that and not take over.
I definitely realized that too late. So I wasn't as diligent. I would just, you know, kind of reflect on the experience and not document it. But luckily, halfway through, I realized, oh goodness, this is such valuable learning. I need to start documenting. So I wrote all my soft learning at the back of my notebook and all my hard learning at the front, and they somehow now seem to meet. So there was enough of both. But that would be a really great strategy if you can actively collect it in a way that you could save it in a cloud, and then later reflect on your whole year. I tend to write down when I have profound moments. So when I have an aha moment, I tend to like write down what it was, and then kind of flesh it out and discuss that with my coach and with my PDE. And I think some of the best learnings was just informally asking someone, like, that didn't feel right, how did it come across? So if you had an interaction and you felt like, you know, maybe I was doing the thing that I was hoping that I could stop doing, just asking the person and saying, you know, how did that come across? Did you feel, you know, I was doing this or that? And so there's so many things to document. And I think if you could have a structured way of going about it, you're definitely gonna get even more out of the process. But you have sessions, often weekly sessions with your PDE. And I would say to use all those data points and properly prepare for your session is definitely advised.
And BC, would you like to add anything to that?
So I'll say that for me, in addition to what Mina has mentioned, there are two things that help. The essays that you write. So for instance, I was reading the essay that you write at the start of the year again, and I was amazed by the perspective I had versus the one I have now. So that definitely gives you something to compare and contrast against. And you write a series of them through the year. The second thing is you get these tests done through the year, starting with the new reports. And these give you data points on how you rank on certain measurements. For instance, there was one that measured that we did that measures you on your need to achieve, your need to be affiliated, and Mina, what's the third one?
I think power or control.
Need for power, yes. There was need for power, need for achievement, and need for affiliation. And I was very sure that I was going to rank highest on need for affiliation because I had been burdened by a fear that I put too much emphasis on what people thought about me. When I got the results and I saw that I was actually highest on need for power, which I guess is a whole other thing, it kind of made me feel like I didn't have to worry so much about, what the next person was thinking. It made me feel like I wasn't actually chained by that. And that kind of set me free, as however that might sound. So knowing that, seeing the data telling me something that was in contrast to something that I had been previously very worried about was very helpful in helping me move forward. So I think that's a very good source of information that you have through the year because we do a series of these tests through the program.
And they actually overlap your NEOs. So your NEO is a little line that runs across a chart. And once you join a new team, they overlay the whole team's NEOs so that
oh my God,
where you're likely to differ. So then your initial meeting is usually like, hey, BC, I see you're strong on this. I'm very low on that. So it it sets the tone as well.
That's the positive mark. Because when you see we're both high on the one thing, it's like going to be okay. Is it going to be me? Is it going to be you?
Yeah.
No, that was great. Yeah.
Okay, so I think I want to take a couple more questions on the careers. So one question from Bernardo is, which kind of support did you receive for deciding your future career path? Which kind of support did the careers office offer to find a position within that chosen track? And let me see, and there's another one from Laura. Could you describe the process you went through to get different interviews with companies? So couple of career questions there, if you could answer those. Mina, do you want to go first?
Yes. So I think the first thing that we did on careers quite early on was also a whole analysis on what kind of work do you like, everything from the environment to daily tasks. And so that for me was very valuable, and that's the starting point. So careers really helps you to figure out with leadership what kind of job and what kind of environment will I need to be happy and will I be successful in.
And this pre-work, sorry to interject there, this pre-work is extremely important. I know the career development stream directors, they highlight and more than highlight, they stress and repeat that really it is very important that you take the time to really go deep into this initial process before you jump into.
And it helps because you inevitably get the question, why are you applying for this job? And if you've done that part, it really helps you to answer that question. Apart from that, we have so many career activities, companies coming on campus and speaking to us. We also have clusters. So we have tech cluster, FMCG cluster, and they also arrange speakers to come and talk to you about how it is to work in the company, how to apply. And then we're fortunate enough to have someone that helps you with your CV. So literally if you want to change your CV for every single application, if it's quite diverse, there's someone that can help you make sure that you're doing it right, apart from all your classmates who are also very helpful. But and then you have your career coach as well. So every single student has a career coach, and you can book time with them to go and speak about, your career search strategy, and they're very good at giving you advice and putting you in contact with the right people. And we also have a good mentor program.
BC, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so just jumping on Mina's point on the mentor program, You're actually assigned, if you want, someone who's an alum from the school that can help you through your career strategy and reaching out to people and deciding on what to settle for, or even thinking about what offer to take when you get to that stage. And in addition to that, I mean, IMD's alumni network is amazing to me. Like the amount of help you get when you reach out, for me personally, in my experience, has been amazing. During the consulting bootcamp, I had my mock interviews with BCG partners who are IMD alums, and who were telling me that who I felt like were begging me to come back to do more mock interviews with them, because we're just that willing to support our class, especially in a year like this. So I think it really helps to kind of be part of that close-knit community. We've had several of our alums come on campus to give us advice about how to brand yourself, how to reach out online, how to stay in contact with people you've met, how to sell yourself, all sorts of very useful tips. And they remain available. I've had alums tell me that they've made it a personal mission to respond to anyone from IMD within 24 hours. Wow. That I've heard several people tell me that, and they've actually done it.
And it's
like
true.
They'll give you their WhatsApp numbers.
Yeah,
they're so quick to give you their WhatsApp numbers. I've had an alum who works at a firm I'm doing final round interviews with review my cover letter via WhatsApp. So that's how much everyone's willing to help. So, and when you get that sort of support, you're only willing to give it back.
So Loic had a question on Alumni Network. I think you've answered that one as well. I hope, Loic, that was a very positive and shows really the strength of the Alumni Network that you come to the school for. And there was a question about how did you get interviews? I mean, we're still in the process. Obviously, we don't want to have interviews too early on, because unless you've done your homework, we're not going to get you out to the market. So once you've done your homework, how does the getting the job or getting the interview or finding the job, how does that process come about? Or where are you at with that? Or because the way it's a sort of simple and difficult question, in the sense that it's it's on the one hand a general process. You know, there are some companies that come on campus, there are some companies that post jobs, and there are some companies that are sort of the regulars, if you like. But then also there's that one-to-one. You know, it's if you're not sure, or you're still streamlining your strategy, or you're looking for something extremely specific. What has been your experience? What we say from our side, it is a one-to-one relationship that you have with the career development directors and team, and really it's tailor-made to what you're looking for, that we develop. That's why there's the word development in it, because you develop it throughout the year, and for some even beyond. So how has it been your experience? And then we have a couple of questions left, but we're running a little bit over time. I hope you don't mind. We know we said we'd be Swiss time about it, but I think we're being African-Italian time here. But I think if we do have time, it would be great for you to answer the questions.
I'll try and keep it very short. So there's a lot of general applications, but there's some jobs that you feel more passionate about, and their alumni has been the key. I've had a lady review my cover letter and get back to me at 11 o'clock at night, an alumni, where she was like, I'm available now, can I phone you? And like from 11 until 12 at night, she was helping me with my cover letter. So if you feel really strongly about a position, there's gonna be someone that can help you. And if we don't have, if the school doesn't have an alum, they tend to have the connections through either a professor or through the dean, or and then in my case, they've helped me with specific, if I say this company, they'll say, okay, you can phone this person. So that has been really helpful and really tailor-made to my job search personally.
Bisi, do you want to add something a little bit to show really the sort of what the career department does, the career development center does in terms of the sort of the class, the courses, the stream, the speakers that they come in, the alumni, yes, on the one hand, the sort of the more general, and then the sort of the more personal. that you've experienced? BC, sorry, I was saying if you wanted to add something a little bit.
Oh, sorry, I lost you.
Yeah, just how has been your experience? How's your experience been in terms of reaching out to companies, getting interviews, deciding which one? You said about the consulting bootcamp, so you got also a lot of help in the preparation phase. But then, how did you get the interview? Is it a company that I was saying how there's a part that is the sort of the general part where a company might come in and sort of offer some positions, but then there's also the one-to-one tailored, what is right for you, and what has been your experience so far in that?
Yeah. So with conversations I've had with my mentor, for instance, I've come up sometimes with lists that are outside of the companies that CDC has arranged for us to meet with. And even sometimes my mentor has given me contacts in those companies, or I've reached out to the class or the alumni network to get people to talk to in those firms. So that's been one way for me to get in. I've also leveraged my personal network. I used to be an analyst and I'm considering roles in investment. So I've reached out to people I know there, and that's gotten me some headroom as well. I've also leveraged network for some of my classmates who've worked in areas I'm looking to get into. So I'll say that those would be the main areas that I've leveraged to get interviews.
So proactive, really, sorry if I interrupt you. So being proactive, really, not just sort of waiting for CDC to say, oh, look, we have some stuff here. It's really that, yeah, Mina, you're sort of shaking your head. It's like, no, none of that.
No, you need to start quite early on to build those, because for someone to make a phone call to you at 11 o'clock at night to help you, like that, it comes a long way. So building those networks and connections, and like BC says, it's often through your classmates' connections, or but CDC has been incredibly helpful, and we've had so many great, for me, some of the most valuable classes was to the CV and cover letter, how to do those professionally, and how to come across as a good candidate in your cover letter. I mean, we spent so much time in class on that, and LinkedIn. We got training on how to set up your LinkedIn, how to, just the things that you take for granted. We've really been trained on, and it just makes your CV land at the top of the pile. And just to have a really professional, impactful CV, because you've done everything. Like if you're planning to apply to IMD, you've done all those things that they're looking for, but you often struggle to articulate it, or you're using the wrong words, or the order is not right, and you will never see it. So it helps to have someone else look at it and to go through the process, and then your CV already stands out. So then if you can be helped with some connections in those companies, it very quickly leads to a first interview, and then you have all your incredible friends in class who are willing to spend time to help you prep for interviews, and even alumni within those companies who are willing to take time and prep you for your interview. And then that's a great advantage to have on so many different levels that I'm sure it's gonna turn out well for us this year.
And also moving ahead as well. I mean, let's not forget the connections that you make now, that you're cultivating and nurturing now, maybe might lead to something else in the long-term future. You never know. So, sorry?
No, definitely.
So BC, if you don't have anything else to add, I'm going to close the session because we are quite a little bit over time. We have just 2 more questions left on the most unique transformational experience that you've had, but I think we've answered those. So I will finish just by saying thank you so much, Mina and BC, for taking time out of your ICP schedule, your international consulting project. So you're well into your work mode at the moment. Student mode is finished. You're consultant now until the end of the year. I just want to thank also our attendees. So thank you so much for signing up and for joining us for the live chat and listening in to Mina and BC share their experiences. We'll have a live chat, and the next live chat, it will be at the end of October, where our Dean, Sean Meehan, Professor Sean Meehan, will talk about all the COVID-related changes that happened to the program and that we've learned from and will either implement and bring over to next year, and just basically what to expect from next year's program. So if you're interested in that, by all means, do sign up on our events page. It will still be at our usual time, Thursday at 3 o'clock. And all the information will be, is on our events page. We have some thank yous in the chat, BC and Mina, so thank you once again. I wish you a lovely continuation to the day, a wonderful weekend ahead, and to our audience as well. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.